topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask Good Questions podcast, broadcasting live every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY Radio at W4CY.com. This week and every week, we will reach for a higher purpose in money and life, as well as a focus on health and wellness. Now, let's join your host, Bonita Bell-Andersen, as together we start with Asking Good Questions.
Hello and welcome to the Ask Good Questions podcast. I am so happy you're here today. We have got a phenomenal show for you today, and I have a guest who I will welcome now to the proverbial podcast stage. His name is Nick Carrigan. He's just a couple years younger than me, but that's on purpose today because we're going to talk about young people and saving and a whole bunch of stuff around finances and people that are more Nick's age. Anyway, welcome so much, Nick. This is Nick Carrigan. He's with TenCap Wealth Coaching, as I am. We are both with the same registered investment advisory firm. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks, Bonnie. How are you?
I am doing good.
Amazing.
So, before we get into our discussion today, I want to give people a little bit of information about who you are. And I'll start with a quote that is on the TenCap Wealth Coaching website, and then I'll have you tell us a little bit about you.
Cool.
Now, Nick says, my favorite conversation to have with clients, family, and friends is discovering your true purpose for money, where we take a look at your relationship with money. Well, we're going to get into that, but right now, why don't we talk a little bit about who is Nick Carrigan?
Yeah, let's do it. Well, I'm from Utah originally, from Sandy, Utah. After high school, I attended Brigham Young University, studied accounting. Very exciting topic to study, of course. No, really though, it worked out well.
It's so needed. It's very much needed.
No, it is really needed. And I just love when I tell people that and everyone thinks I'm a math whiz, but really accounting is very simple math, but I'll take it still. Very good at math. Yeah, for sure. No, it's great. I really liked my background in accounting. After college, I briefly spent some time with KPMG and then transitioned to wealth advising here at TenCap. So yeah, I've been here 8 years about total. And
is it 8 years now? God.
About 8 years. And I enjoy what I do. You know, it's the advisory work and financial planning. It works well for me. I like to put together puzzles, and you know, I've got a strategy mind, or I enjoy strategy. So being able to position somebody, whether it's tax or estate planning or investments or insurance planning, and bringing everything together in a very strategic way, it's stimulating for me.
Awesome. Well, you know, my feeling is that Nick has a phenomenal career ahead of him. He's going to do a lot of good for a lot of people. But today we're going to focus on young people, the 20-somethings, 30-somethings that in my 25 years in the industry, I've seen them say, oh, I'll do that later. I'll worry about it later. And then I've got 60-year-olds coming into my office looking like a deer in the headlights going, oh, crap, I never did anything to save for myself. So we're going to break this down into a couple of different areas. We're going to talk about mindset. We're going to talk about some practical strategies because I really want those that are in this age group to really be taking this seriously today. We're going to talk about something called lifestyle creep, which I think which besets all of us in some way. We're going to talk about future planning and mindful wealth building. So how does that sound, Nick?
It sounds great to me. Where should we start?
Well, let's start with the whole mindset idea, because I'm really of the opinion that, you have to think it before it turns in any kind of action. So what do you think it means to live intentionally with your money? And how does that differ from, I don't know. I almost think that budgeting is a dirty word for most people, but how do you live intentionally with your money? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. When people talk about a budget, typically it's talking about what they want to spend money on, or in the ideal, what's the range we can spend on certain things next month or next year. Yeah. Where spending with intention is more of not asking what to spend money on, but why. Why spend money, and why are we spending it on these certain things? Where else could we spend it, and why not there? So yeah, a budget, just to say it again, a budget is what to spend. Spending intentionally is why you spend it. And there's a whole world behind why you spend money on certain things and why you don't spend money on other things. And, I prefer to just suspend good and bad for this conversation and rather just look at effective or not effective. What are your goals? Yeah. And what's effective? Is the way you're spending money effective in reaching those goals or not? And so it strips away the good or the bad from the conversation and the guilt, from the conversation of budgeting, and just lets us look at the numbers.
Well, how do you think someone can identify the difference between a need, a want, and a status symbol, maybe?
And a status symbol. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's also in the want category, I would think.
Say more about that, Bonnie. Which category would you put that in?
And I would say if you're thinking that you want something because it would be a status symbol, then that's definitely a want. It's not something you need. You want it because you think it's going to make you look good.
Yeah, that's true. As humans, we definitely have needs. We need food, we need shelter, we need water, things of that nature. And if you look at where we spend our money, a lot of the time we're not spending our money on those things. We're spending money on other things that aren't food, shelter, or maybe more elaborate food, more elaborate shelter, more delicious food, I should say. So really identifying, well, what am I spending my money on? And again, why? Is it because I want to survive? Is it because I want to look good? Is it because I want to impress? Well, those categories are probably wants. And that's not a problem. I like to spend money on things that make me look good. I'd rather show up to work with a neat shirt than not a neat shirt.
Right.
So again, just suspending right and wrong in the conversation has it go over better for me. It's not wrong to spend money on wants. Again, it's just more of, does it get you to your goal or not? Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with spending money on nice food, delicious. I love food. If I could, I'd spend every last dollar I had on just delicious gourmet food.
Yeah, that's a problem for
me. But then you get into another world of, does that work with my dieting goals, and my physique goals, not just money goals?
Usually not.
Yeah. So I guess
what do you think about your environment? I think a lot of times this type of thing is really influenced by your family, your friends, social media. And I think that, talk about how do you think that influences your spending habits?
It certainly can influence your spending habits. I've had friends that all they want to do is go to big, expensive concerts and sit front row. And if I want to spend time with those friends, I've got to go buy the nice concert tickets and sit front row. Again, it's not right or wrong. I love concerts. I love sitting front row at concerts. It's just, again, it comes back to, is that inside of the world of, this is going to get me to my goal or not?
Right. Right.
As it relates to wants, needs versus wants, I think there is a tendency as human beings to compare ourselves with the neighbors or our friends, other people in our friend group. And I think it's a good thing we do that as human beings, because for a long time, when we were very tribal and instinctive people or in early human history, I think it helped us survive. If our swords or our weapons weren't as advanced as our neighbors, in that case, the tribe next door, well, that tribe's going to come over the hill and they're going to beat down our defenses and they're going to take all of our stuff. And who knows if we're living after that. So I think this tendency, this urge to compare to our neighbors, again, it's not wrong. It's probably a good thing. Otherwise we wouldn't be here as a species. Right. That being said, it just doesn't serve us very well in modern day financial markets, in such that we always want to have the cars that the neighbors have, the houses, the watches, et cetera, et cetera. So understanding that, again, it just takes out the morality of the issue. It doesn't always have to be a right and wrong topic. It's just, I keep saying this, but it's just so true. Does it serve your goals or not?
Well, I think what you're really getting at is kind of like self-awareness, right? So I think that if you're more self-aware, you're going to avoid impulsive financial decisions, right? Because I've seen people go, oh, dang, why did I do that? Why did I buy that? But I think what you're really talking about here is kind of if we're talking about mindset here a little bit, it's self-awareness. What do you think?
Yeah, self-awareness for sure. I think, you find yourself on a bad day at the car dealership, and a good salesman might talk you into something you didn't necessarily want to buy. And a couple of days, maybe weeks, maybe months later, you're thinking to yourself, I don't know if I should have bought that or not. It all plays a role. I think having structures set up in advance helps you in those high stress moments where maybe a salesman is pressuring you to buy something you don't necessarily need or want later on.
Well, I think you're getting back to always having your mind, why am I doing this?
Yeah. Having why, like sitting down and really discovering for yourself, what is your why with money? What is the why behind the budget? But also more than that, Bonnie, would be putting structures into place. Let me say it differently. It's not enough to just have a why, because your why can be forgotten in those high stress moments, or your why can be put, in your back pocket, so to speak, in those high stress moments, or when you've got an urge that's really kicking in. Oh man, I just, it happens to me with food all the time. It's not just money we're talking about. It's food. It's all of it. Where you might have a delicious meal and then somebody walks by, the waiter walks by and puts the cheesecake on, the other table, and you're thinking, I need one of those too. I need it. And in that moment, it's not a want, it is a need. Let me tell you.
Yeah. And then you see the bill and you go, oh crap.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same with spending money too, which is at certain times in your life, you're going to be more connected mentally to your why than others. And it's because as humans, we have those emotions, we have instincts, we have biases, and those get in the way of rationale. That gets in the way of being connected to our why with money. So that's why having the structures in place is really important. Structures around spending, structures around investing, structures around paying the mortgage, structures around paying debt, things of that nature. Not only the why, but also the structure. Both are very important.
Well, let's get into some practical strategies, some things that might really help. What do you think are some small lifestyle changes that can make a big impact over time?
The biggest thing I've seen clients do, just a small tweak here and there that makes a big impact over time, is making saving and investing more systematic.
Yes.
It's actually called a systematic contribution. You can set up a $20, a $50, a $200, a $2,000 automatic withdrawal from your checking account, and then deposit into your investment account that happens on the same day every month. that just makes it really automatic for your investing. That way you don't have to decide at the end of the month, hey, I've got $500 left. What do I do with it? Do I go spend it? Do I invest it? No, it's just already invested. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to make the decision. The system's already in place to make it happen.
I think that's great. Well, let me have you walk us through how someone might audit their monthly spending to cut the fluff out.
Well, I think as human beings, we have an incredible ability to expand our spending to what's available.
Yeah, we do.
And usually it's easier to expand than to go the other way and deflate your spending. So the best thing you can do is don't inflate to begin with. Okay. But it sounds like your question is more of, hey, we've inflated the budget. How do we turn it back? How do we kick it back? And it can be tough. It can be uncomfortable. It can be difficult to do. But you have to think to yourself, have I at some point in my life spent less money than I'm currently spending? Mm-hmm. If the answer is yes, then therefore it's obvious that the budget you're trying to get down to is possible because you've already done it. So knowing that it is possible to live within your means, that's really the first step. The second step is I would just get really clear on what your numbers actually are. So look at the last 3 months, 6 months, maybe 12 months, and go ahead and itemize. You can get help with this from accountants, or there's a lot of wealth coaches online that will sit down with you and look at your actual transactions and help you put those into buckets. Buckets meaning like, is this a grocery expenditure? Was this a dining expense? Was this, was this dating was the category, or housing? Was this mortgage or things of that nature? So different buckets, putting different expenses into different buckets, and then realizing, whoa, I'm spending a lot on this specific category I don't necessarily need to do. Right. And everyone should do this next part, or, not should, just, it would do you a lot of benefit if you did. Every 6 months or so, just go on no spend mode for 4 weeks, just for a full month. And don't buy anything other than gas to put in the car, food to put in your body, basic food to put in your body, and insurance, and then the mortgage or the rent and utilities. Just see every 6 months, see if you can do that for a month. I think you'll really surprise yourself with how little you can get by with.
I can see some people, I can just hear it. Some people are going to say, yeah, but things cost more now. Well, yeah, you've got to adjust for that. And, the thing is, like, if you want to do something like I love scuba diving. Well, I have a special account and I just put money in there for future things. And so it could be a savings. If you're feeling like everything is costing more now, what about just having special savings that you save for, like that big Taylor Swift concert that costs $500 or something like that, right?
Now we're talking. So, are you a Swiftie, Bonnie?
Not really. My kids are. I mean, it's like she's okay, but I don't know. They actually were in Europe last year when she was giving her show in Amsterdam, and the tickets were expensive, but they were like, we got to do this. We got to do this. We got to go. So they did. And it was an amazing thing to see Taylor Swift in Amsterdam, apparently.
Amazing. I found out recently I have something in common with Taylor Swift. I was with a good friend of mine who is a major self-identified Swiftie, and I like her music and all too. But she told me, I didn't know this about Taylor. I knew she was dating a football player, of course. Okay.
Right.
But I didn't know that her favorite NFL team was the Eagles. I didn't know that. I just assumed it was the team of her boyfriend. But that's also my favorite football team is the Eagles. So me and Taylor Swift, we are, you have
something in common.
We're coupled in that way. Go Birds. You know what I mean? So
okay, let me ask the next question here. I'm thinking about like frugality and deprivation, like I'm going to deprive myself of this. Well, that's a really negative thing. How can you avoid going too far the other direction where you're just feeling like I never get to have any fun?
Yeah, that's a great question. you're getting into the world of mindsets around not just spending money, but also making money, which really is the same. It's the same thing. The way you relate to saving money is probably very close, if not the same thing as the way you relate to making money. What I've seen is the folks that are their truth, or the way they say the world is it's easy to make money. They're the folks that typically make the most money. And now you know, the argument to that is, well, Nick, they think it's easy to make money because they make more money. I would disagree there. I think usually it's the other way around. I believe strongly that those who believe it's easy to make money end up making more money, not the other way around. And
it's a mindset.
I do believe it is a mindset. You kind of come back to, if you just take two people, one of them believes they really live life like it's hard to make friends, and then the other person believes and lives life like it's easy to make friends. Well, you know, Bonnie, just between me and you, who would you reckon makes more friends?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I'm totally with you, because I would rather live life like that, because I think it can be kind of miserable, always finding everything that's wrong with everything out there. Well, okay, so let's do a couple of principles here. I'm sure you've already for who knows how long have heard pay yourself first. And I think the whole idea of automation plays into that. If you pay yourself first, then that means you're automatically putting money into savings, putting money into your 401k and all of that sort of thing. Yeah,
that's right.
And so how do you think, how would you prioritize financial goals? What do you think? Is it always going to be the long-term goals are more important, or, how would you prioritize financial goals?
As far as long-term goals versus short-term goals?
Yeah, well, like debt repayment, emergency funds, emergency funds, that's another one that you should have. How many months do you think you should have in emergency savings?
Yeah, great question. I would say between 3 months to a year. And my general advice is, if you're a W-2 employee, well, actually, it's more of how regular is your income, whether you're W-2, 1099, doesn't matter. Yeah. W-2 tends to be more stable than 1099, but just forget that part of it and say, how stable is my income? Do I get the same amount each month? If the answer is yes, I think having 3 months of expenses is 3 or 4 is pretty standard as far as advice that I would give. And I wouldn't have that in cash under the mattress. I would have that in like an online cash account or high yield savings account.
Right.
As of the date of this recording, online savings accounts can get you somewhere around 4% interest. Those are obviously going to fluctuate automatically with interest rates. So as interest rates get higher, so will the interest rates on those high yield savings accounts automatically. And then as they come down, the interest rates on the cash accounts will follow automatically. That differs pretty considerably from like a CD, for example, where a CD, you open it, you put the money in there, and the money, you're supposed to leave the money there for a set period of time in order to get that set interest rate. The interest rate doesn't fluctuate on the account. But then once the CD comes due or matures, you can open a new CD, usually at a different rate. So for emergency accounts, I'd say if your income doesn't fluctuate, go with 3 to 4 months expenses. If your income does fluctuate, I'd go closer to 5-6 months expenses. If you own a business and it's not just your lifestyle you're responsible for, but also your employees' lifestyle you're responsible for, and not only your revenue fluctuates, but also your personal income fluctuates, I'd go closer to maybe the year. I think that sounds a whole lot more responsible.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this whole idea of lifestyle creep, because a lot of the things that we're talking about are behavior issues, right? There's a lot of studies, as you know, that have been done about financial behaviors. And a lot of times they're not so good. People tend to have bad habits. And one of those can be this thing that we call lifestyle creep. So how would you define that? How would you define it, and how can you identify it if it's something that might be in your life and you might not even know?
Yeah, lifestyle creep is just having your lifestyle gradually increase over time. Typically, a lot of people will correlate it with a raise in income. So if you get a raise in income, you might really truly believe, okay, great, I'm not going to spend any of this money. I'm just going to invest all of the excess. I'm going to save it all. Believe it or not, that's usually not what happens. Like I said earlier, human beings have an incredible capacity to expand the spending to what's available. And lifestyle creep is having your income go up over time. It just creeps in there. You might not be doing it intentionally. I think the best way to combat that is, like you said, Bonnie, pay yourself first. Set up some systems that automatically invest, automatically save that income as soon as you get it. And by doing it that way, you're really just giving yourself permission to spend what's left over. And you don't have to feel weird or bad about it or guilty about it, because you've already paid yourself. You've already paid the IRA. You've already paid the 401k. You've already put money into the savings, and you don't have to worry about spending the excess because you know that you're taken care of.
Right. Well, I know that you have an opinion about how long you wait before adjusting your lifestyle.
The longer, the better.
I think you had said something like you should wait at least a year. You know, you get a raise and it's like, oh, great, the raise. But do you think a year is a good point to say wait? And
I think a year makes a whole lot of sense. If you can do 2 or 3 or 4, great. But yeah, a year.
Do that.
Well, yeah. I mean, if what we're talking about right now is if you do get a raise, just pretend you didn't get that raise for a year and see how much of it you can save. And having those systems in place to make sure that excess, that new money, maybe your 401k, you go from 5% to 7% or something like that. I think that would be great, because then it wouldn't feel like you're making more money, even though you are. It's just landing, in your 401k rather than in your personal checking account, where, what lands in the personal checking account just has this magic way of getting spent. I don't know how it works.
Well, I can just hear somebody saying, you guys are no fun. How can you reward yourself, do you think, after a raise without blowing that quote unquote budget?
I think you spoke to it already with that special savings account, your Taylor Swift account. Mm-hmm. I think setting up
No, not Taylor Swift's. Well, maybe. For me, it's scuba diving.
Scuba diving. Yeah, that's right.
Like in exotic places. And I can tell you what, it's expensive. So yeah, it takes a bit.
For me, it's nice steakhouses. I like going. So open a savings account, and the full purpose of that account is to receive money, whatever you decide it to be, $100, $200 or more, each month. Setting up that automatic, systematic payment, and then that money just builds, and then that's the money you get to go have some fun with, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. Every time I have gone on a scuba diving trip, where I've spent, way more than I've been able to take that money out of the account, it's very rewarding. So I guess I would also say that when you do that, it's like this like celebration thing that you have with yourself, like, wow, I did it. So again, it's human nature, and we like to reward ourselves, right?
I think, and to this point on the call, there's really nothing groundbreaking that we've talked about, and we're not the author of any of these great ideas. These ideas have been prudent ideas for a long time. But another thing that I think is also human nature, people tend to speak about human nature as if it's negative. And don't get me wrong, there can be some downsides, but there can also be some upsides. For example, I think it's human nature also to perform better when you have somebody keeping you accountable to your goals. And that's not just in money or saving. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, you're right. You should. There's so much that can waylay people, and so I think if we get all the way back to what we talked about at the beginning, it's like self-awareness and really looking at how can I make my life better and why am I doing it and all of that stuff. Yeah. Let's turn to investing and future planning. So you and I have been on the same track as far as how to invest for a very long time. Do you want to summarize what the way, we don't pick stocks, like if somebody's out there going, oh, well, with my extra dollars, I'm going to pick some stocks or follow the latest guru. So you and I don't think like that. What are you going to say is kind of like the background framework for how to invest and do that future planning?
Yeah, as far as the background, investors would benefit greatly by being very clear in defining an investment philosophy. Mm-hmm. And the problem with that is most people don't know all the philosophies that are available to be chosen from. Yeah. So do yourself a favor and get some education on, hey, what options are there as far as philosophies? If somebody wants to go on a diet, okay, my next question is, what diet are you on? And a lot of people, whoa, there's multiple diets to choose from. I had no idea. Go find somebody who knows about the world of dieting and can help craft a diet specifically for you. Like, for example, there's multiple types of diets. You could do carnivore, you could do vegan, you could do vegetarian, you could do high protein, low carb, you could do high carb, low protein, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all these philosophies to dieting. Well, it's the same with investing. And just like dieting, if you're on the carnivore diet and you're loading up on potatoes, that's totally inconsistent with your philosophy, your diet philosophy, or your dieting goals. Okay. So my point in saying that is a lot of the philosophies in the world of dieting are contra to one another. They don't work with each other. And it's the same with different philosophies in investing. You have multiple philosophies. Most people don't know there's multiple philosophies. And worst of all, the philosophies actually compete or are contra to each other. So most people think that investing is coming up with some sort of forecast or prediction about the future, and then using that forecast or prediction to get somehow a leg up on all the other people that are investing, whether it's buying a specific stock, timing the market just right, finding a fund manager who can do both of those things and just pay that person to do it for you. I would say that's one philosophy of investing. Now, in addition to that, there's a completely other world of investing that has nothing to do with that. Matter of fact, any of those actions would be very counterintuitive in this other world of investing. And the other world of investing, I would call the academics of investing, something that's more evidence-based. I'm not so much interested in a prediction. I'm not so much interested in a story or a guess or a speculation. I would never use vocabulary like play the market or bet on a stock. Just listen to the language. These are very speculative phrases and terms. I would use language like evidence, theories, statistics. How statistically relevant is that? More academic type phrases. And I would have the more academic world govern my portfolio and the portfolio for the clients that choose to work with me. And I would recommend to anybody, there's a good chance that would work out better for you than the other option, which is the speculating and gambling side of investing.
So there's another word that's a lot of times people are very confused about, and that's diversification.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're going to get back to, how do they get started? But if we're going to talk about being diversified, then that means we're going to be, I liken it to spreading a net really, really wide, because our world is very crazy right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how would you sum up diversification?
Yeah, a great question. And Bonnie, you have about 4 hours we can take to really unpack this.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
so just so everyone knows, we have other workshops and things that we do to explain to people what this means. So hopefully if this is piquing your interest, then yeah, there are ways to go into it in a deeper way.
Yeah.
But
totally.
what does diversification mean to you? Let's leave it let's just say it's a definition.
Yeah. We'll be quick about it, okay? Let's talk about what diversification, actually, if I may, Bonnie, let's talk about what diversification is not. Okay. And even though most people think what I'm about to describe is intelligent diversification. So when I analyze portfolios, and I analyze tons of portfolios every year, I see time and time again something very common, which is people will own multiple mutual funds in their portfolio. And they'll say, Nick, look how diversified I am. I have 10 different mutual funds. It's like, wow, maybe that's good. I don't know. Let's take a deeper look. So what we'll do is we'll actually crack open, not actually crack it open, but we'll use some software to actually look inside of the mutual fund and see
look at what's in there.
Yeah. See what the mutual fund is holding. So, crack it open, so to speak, and we'll see what's inside. And what you'll see is, just to use a really simple example, let's say somebody's holding 3 mutual funds. Well, they'll own Apple, Google, Amazon, Tesla, in all 3 of the funds.
Yeah.
So there's a word for that. It's called overlap. And overlap is, to what extent do you hold the same stocks in each of the mutual funds? Okay. Because if you have 10 mutual funds, but all 10 mutual funds hold the same 30 stocks, there's no reason to hold 10 mutual funds. Just hold one, or just hold the 30 funds, the 30 stocks directly. So having overlap between multiple mutual funds, it lessens the degree of diversification you actually have. And it's actually worse than just it not being diversification when you factor in things like turnover. So what turnover is if let's say the mutual fund manager says, hey, you know what, Tesla, I don't like what's going on with Tesla and leadership right now. Let's sell it out of the mutual fund. Okay. Meanwhile, one of your other mutual fund managers who has a completely different opinion on Tesla, has a completely different forecast on Tesla, could be saying, hey, Tesla's a great buy right now. Let's buy it. Okay. So the problem with that is it's not free to trade stocks. So what you're doing is you're taking Tesla out of your right pocket. You're paying a transaction fee to sell it back to yourself.
Yeah.
It'd be like taking your car to the used car dealer, selling it for 10 grand, and then going back a week later, buying it for 12. Nobody would do that. No. But yet people are doing it all the time in their portfolio and not even realizing it.
Well, so let's say someone says, okay, you've convinced me to start investing. Where would somebody start?
I think first, let's get you an education. We'll want you to understand really clearly what the investment philosophy options are, like all the different investment philosophies. And we'll want to find the one that works best with you. We work with the folks who chose the academic style of governing the portfolio. And if that is in alignment with an investor, we would really enjoy taking on that customer, that client, I should say. For those folks that want more of a speculative, like stock picking, market timing, maybe you just don't know enough about the academic world. You're not totally persuaded yet. No problem. Let's chat. Let's talk some more. Let's get you some more education. And after that education, if you're really just gung ho about the stock picking, the market timing, that's fine. I don't think it's going to work very well. I wouldn't govern my portfolio that way, but let's find you an advisor who you can work with that does that.
Well, can you share a story or an example of how short-term discipline really has led to long-term financial transformation?
The biggest opportunities or the biggest anecdotes I can point to illustrate clients having discipline in the short term that really paid off in the long term. Is that the question you're asking? I want to make sure first.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah. The best way to do it is looking at the COVID crisis, where from March to about mid-April, stocks just plummeted. U.S. large stocks really just took it. Really, every area of the global market really just tanked. And we had a lot of clients like, what is going on? Like, can we hold this portfolio? Should we make changes? Should we sell out? Should we move to cash? What do we do? And the clients, I don't think I had any clients. Matter of fact, I'm very confident that I didn't have a single client sell out in that instance.
Because you've done a good job. You've done a good job on teaching them.
I have great mentors, and at least
we try, right?
We do our best, and that's ultimately where the advisors are the biggest value, is when investors want to do things like that. It's a huge mistake, or at least it can be a huge mistake. I didn't have any clients who decided to make changes to their portfolio during that COVID crisis, and it's a really good thing none of them did, because from the remainder of the year, from the tail end of the year, the stocks just soared. They absolutely soared. They rewarded the disciplined investors very well. And the investors who did, unfortunately, decide to make changes to the portfolio, specifically moving from stocks more to fixed income or even cash, they were not rewarded nearly to the degree as the disciplined investors. Mm-hmm. So that is, in my opinion, one of the best arguments for working with an advisor. There's certainly more. There's more value an advisor can add than just keeping you disciplined in those moments. But that's definitely the largest one, maybe the largest one, is keeping you disciplined in those moments, because just one mistake, take one bummer of a lunch break at work, and you look at your portfolio and you decide to sell your stocks from equities to cash, and then you totally erode an otherwise perfect portfolio. It's really disappointing. It's really too bad that happens, but it happens too often.
One of the reasons why I call this podcast the Ask Good Questions podcast, because in 2008, I had not been asking good questions, and I had some real estate stuff that I really suffered. But it was the same thing, Nick. You saw people getting out at the bottom of the market, and the market came back. And so our time is just about gone. It's always amazing to me, because it's like, oh, this will be lots of time, but no, it usually is not. So let's sum up. What are the principles that they need to be thinking about? What are some? Let's see if we can give them, like, here are the things to do.
Well, give Bonnie a call. That's step one. Now, in reality, I think some really wise steps, and again, the context of the conversation is more for younger, the 20 to 30 age group. I would say, first and foremost, just know your numbers, understand what you are spending, and then really dig in to do the work as to why are you spending your money there. And again, suspend the conversation of good, bad, right, wrong, and just have an honest conversation with yourself about why you're doing what you're doing. And then getting really clear on, hey, what are my goals? What are my goals for retirement? What are my goals for income? What are my goals for spending? And then you can align those two conversations to say, does one support the other or not? From there, Bonnie, we discussed having an emergency fund. I think it's crucial. Investors have, again, 3 to 6 months, sometimes up to a year of expenses saved up before they start investing in the stock market. And then once you've done those steps, let's get you an investment account. Let's make sure it's the right investment account for you. There's plenty of types of investment accounts. And then let's also make sure the investment philosophy governing those accounts really align with your long-term spending, income, and investment goals.
Yep. That sounds like a great way to really, man. And you know what I also feel about this stage of life, the 20-somethings to 30-somethings. If your money is in chaos, then usually the rest of your life is in chaos. If you're kind of starting to get a handle on it, you're always going to be learning more. But if you get a handle on this, usually other things in life are going to go better.
Well said, Bonnie.
So our time is done. Holy cow.
Can you believe it?
I will be leaving. If anyone wants to get in touch with Nick, I'm going to be leaving his information in our bonus downloads on the podcast website. But Nick, thank you so much for joining us today. I am hoping that this is going to spur some people who have not started getting going with their finances to take some good positive action. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.
All righty.
Today's episode is over, but we did ask good questions again, didn't we? Don't miss out as we broadcast live every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY Radio at W4CY.com. Join Bonita Bell-Andersen next week for more conversations with experts on finances, retirement, behavioral finance issues, health and wellness, and more. Until then, remember to ask good questions.